What society needs to know about sex offenders. A few decades ago, a witch hunt started against those labeled as sex offenders. Other common terms that popped up were predators, pedophiles, rapists, child molesters, etc. Certain groups, as well as the media, were much at fault for this beginning. Out of witch hunts arise unfair judgment, speculation, assumption, false accusations, persecution, harassment, attacks, even murder. Also common are lies, rumors, myths, misconceptions, etc. And for sex offenders, they all exist, even murder. Even after all these years, while science and psychology has proven many of these myths untrue, the majority of society still latches on to and even believes what they hear from the media and from hearsay, or even their own made-up opinions and beliefs. The main reason for this is that the truth and facts have not gotten out to society. That is why it is important to get the truth and facts to the mass population, and there just may be those who don't want that to happen. If there is one main thing that keeps a witch hunt going and keeps a society locked into a mass phobia, hatred, hysteria, persecution, etc., it is ignorance to the truth and facts, and a lack of education about the actual issues. And now we are responsible for educating the masses and to turn around the destructive and harmful chaos that others have imposed on us. Let us look at some of the common lies and misconceptions about sex offenders and sex offenses. Myth number 1. Sex offenders are all bad, terrible monsters who lurk in the dark places and wear trench coats waiting to prey on our children. That is absolutely false. The majority of offenders these days are probably convicted of viewing child pornography and have never molested a child or even thought about it. Most offenders are quite normal people, just like you and me. They can be family members, church leaders, politicians, teachers, legal and law enforcement personnel, male or female, famous and well-known people. Even President Clinton was accused of sex scandals. Most offenders are not bad people. They have just made some bad decisions. Even those who have crossed the lines to molest or rape a person usually started out pretty average people, and usually various problems in their lives that were not being handled well led up to their bad decisions to offend. With treatment, the majority of them are able to reestablish their lives and once again become worthwhile and safe persons in their communities. Sex offenders are people, not animals. Myth number 2. All sex offenders are violent predators waiting to kidnap and murder our children. Absolutely false. Though these terrible cases have occurred, they are few and rare. Again, the majority are probably cases of viewing illegal pornography, which also does not mean they will all lead into sexually assaulting children. Some offenders have stumbled upon child pornography on the internet by accident, and for whatever reasons decided to look at it and then got caught. Some have molested children with no similar prior thoughts or actions, and many do not repeat their offenses. All cases and offenders are different. They are not all the same. The majority of those who molest or rape are actually known by their victims, such as family members or relatives. They are not strangers who are out in public seeking children for sexual purposes. Number 3 myth. Accusations against sex offenders are always true. Absolutely false. Churches have said the world has never seen such false accusations on such a level as those relating to sex. With the help of DNA testing, we continue to discover the many unfortunate men who have served long terms in prison, many dying there, that were never guilty of the rape crimes of which they were accused. In 1994, a single accusation of child molesting in a church in Wenatchee, Washington, exploded in the church and the town, resulting in hundreds of false accusations. Families separated, reputations ruined. After a year in courts, only one conviction, but many damaged lives. Recently, the Seattle mayor was falsely accused of a past sex offense. He has decided not to run again. He stated false accusations of sexual offenses not only hurt the gay community, but also the true victims and even the true offenders. In other words, we have enough to worry about already. Myth number 4. All sex offenders keep repeating their offenses and can never stop. Absolutely false. Granted, there are a few that struggle with maintaining control, especially if they have been in a cycle of these behaviors for a long time. But even then, with help, most are able to pull themselves out of it. Again, there are one-time offenders, never before and never after. Contrary to popular lies and myths, recidivism rates are actually only around 3.5%. This is very small. With treatment, most offenders are able to live an offense-free life. Granted, many of them can have relapses, such as probation violations, fantasy problems, legal adult pornography, etc., but most do not cross illegal boundaries to an actual reoffense. Contrary to common lies, recent studies have concluded that most offenders of all types do reach a point where they decide to change and never return to their past criminal or deviant lives for many different reasons. Myth number 5. All sex offenders are crazed psychopaths and have no feelings. Absolutely false. Though there are a few unfortunate persons like that, they are rare. The majority of sex offenders actually do have feelings and emotions, and sometimes more than others who are not offenders. They do have a conscience that tells them what they are sometimes planning to do is wrong and that they shouldn't do it. They do feel ashamed and guilty of what they are doing. And they do feel guilty, sorry, remorseful, and regret what they did after. Overwhelming emotions can even play a part in offending. Offenders can actually love their victims very much. They can feel a lot of empathy. They can be excellent fathers and mothers, etc. Unfortunately, distorted thinking, such as minimizing and justifying, or drugs and alcohol, can act as disinhibitors and allow them to do what, in most cases, they really don't want to do. What can appear to be simply sexual gratification also can be attempting to resolve many different issues in a person's life. Myth number 6. Sex offenders should be branded, castrated, and deserve capital punishment. Absolutely false. This witch hunt and vigilante type of thinking is simply irrational, cruel, and insane. These ideas are not only unconstitutional, but also barbaric. Most states, including Washington, are considering abolishing capital punishment. This thinking has led to many cruel attacks on offenders and their innocent families. Harassment, signs posted in yards, houses burnt down, assaults, threats, and even one offender being murdered and his killer receiving no punishment at all. With the onslaught of John Walsh's America's Most Wanted and the many cop manhunt shows to follow, we have become a finger-pointing, suspicious witch hunt society. This thinking is ruining our nation and needs to stop. Methods like this do not help anyone. It destroys people. Sex offenders and their innocent families already experience mass humiliation, stress, and other difficulties. They already receive extreme sentences and extreme conditions and restrictions that follow. That is certainly enough and too much. Let us consider that imposing this sort of pressure on anyone could lead to negative consequences, including reoffending. Myth number 7. All sex offenders are pedophiles, rapists, and child molesters. Absolutely false. Again, the majority these days are viewing child pornography cases, which does not make them true pedophiles who are solely attracted to children. Many who do molest children are solely attracted to adults. But for various reasons, children became an alternative sexual outlet. There are men and women who offend against men and women. Many offenders are only exhibitionists or voyeurs and do not commit hand-on offenses. Some are sexually attracted to animals. All sex offenders are not the same, and they vary widely. Myth number 8. Sex offenders are too dangerous to work around others. Absolutely false. The majority of them have been able to find work and are working, and usually with other people. Certain restrictions do protect the offender and others, such as offenders who offended against children, not working around children, or refraining from computer use. They can be valuable employees. Many still on supervision and in treatment are highly monitored and assisted in their communities. Remember, they are just like all of us, and they have problems just like all of us. Alcoholism, drug abuse, workaholic, overeating, numerous mental health issues, sexaholic, etc. And theirs just happens to be about sex in general, but also other issues in their lives as well. The important thing to know is that most of them are doing something about it and making changes in their lives that will help, that with the help of treatment and their own willpower. What is dangerous is when they can't find work and end up homeless. These low self-esteem issues can lead to a higher risk of reoffense. What offenders need are the same things we all need: love, caring, compassion, understanding, support, and getting help in getting their lives back together. Ridicule and rejection only makes the situation worse. It does not help. Myth number 9. Sex offenders are too dangerous to live around others. Totally false. There are thousands of offenders in every city and every state, and most of them are living amongst us. Granted, there are few who do reoffend, and that can make the rest of them look bad, who are only trying to put their past behind them and get their lives and their families' lives back to normal. And they all need our help, just as we all need help sometimes. What doesn't help is when they can't find a decent and safe place to live and end up homeless or in some temporary rental room situation full of prostitution and drugs. You probably know the ones. Nothing will bring a person's self-esteem down quicker, and the risk of reoffense and return to prison increases. Just like with work, many offenders do have residence restrictions, such as not living around children. But then many are living with their own children. Decisions to rent or not rent to an offender should be on a case-to-case basis, not blanket rejection just because of a felony or sex conviction. And all too often it is. The bottom line is discrimination, as in most cases they cannot prove any actual risk to their residents. It's all speculation, assumption, and unfair judgment, often based on lies and rumors. Also, due to the public stigma involved, many people simply don't want to get involved for fear that they themselves will now be judged for helping those who much of the public seem to despise. This is a common reaction in a witch hunt. Again, love, compassion, understanding, support, and help. That is what works. Myth number 10. All sex offenders should be locked up for life on a one-strike law. False. This ridiculous thinking is why this proposed law by a few very ignorant persons has never passed, and it never will. If you did this to one group, you would have to do it with all groups. Everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect. Because of that, the majority of the world would be in prison for something. Would these individuals still propose this law if it were their family member, relative, best friend, spouse, etc., who were accused? Everyone deserves another chance to change and to correct their mistakes. Even murderers get another chance. Again, this is the irrational thinking that can come out of a witch hunt. Many of these people don't even understand the actual issues and are ignorant to the truth and facts. Many of these people have a low self-esteem themselves and only judge others to make themselves feel better, more valuable, or important. Myth number 11. All sex offenders are born that way and are mentally ill. Totally false. Though there is still some study on this issue, the general consensus is that with most offenders, these are usually learned or self-taught behaviors, developed at different stages in their lives for various reasons. Apparently, some persons may have some internal physical issue, such as brain damage, that can also cause erratic or irrational behavior. But with most sex offenders, treatment studies reflect that they usually develop these irrational thoughts, feelings, and actions based on various unresolved issues in their lives, from childhood on up. And these are some of the ways they developed to try to resolve or deal with these issues, which can be learned or self-taught. This irrational thinking and acting is in essence related to mental health issues in general, but not usually in the way that many people assume, where it causes a person to act out uncontrollably and violently against their will with no understanding of how it affects others, like a psychopath. Most sex offenders are normally intelligent, do have judgment, understanding, empathy, and control. They just allow themselves to lose control through irrational thinking. They are not born that way any more than a person is born a plumber. Thank you, and may God bless us all.